Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's the Jade Gemini. This afternoon I am super excited to go and bring you a review of this guy right here. This, well, doesn't even need an introduction, but this is the Spyderco Para 3. And today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what I like, what I love, what I dislike, and if it applies, what is rubbish about the Para 3 right here. Before we go ahead and jump right into that though, let's get some size comparisons out of the way of some common pocket knives that people will probably have. So the first thing is I'm actually going to use a little bit more of a common, non-knife enthusiast knife, because you might be somebody who's looking into your first knife and wanting something, premium. So the first one is a 91mm Victorinox Swiss Army knife. Now it does have aftermarket scales that are micarta, gorgeous, but still you get the idea here of size. Next, we're actually going to use a AA battery. Again, just the sort of mindset that if you're somebody like wanting to buy your first ever really nice knife, you get sort of an idea here of the size as well. And here's the size closed too, as well as real knives, right? So here's, of course, the Benchmade bug out. So as you can see, not too different actually in the size closed, but definitely higher and a lot more tall than a lot of common pocket knives. And this is the knife open as well. So here's where you really get a sort of idea of size, both shorter when open, but really different in the way that the blade length is here. With this knife, and something that we'll talk about, you get a lot of handle and you get a shorter amount of blade because of the way that everything is set up ergonomically. So, getting this also in comparison with the size here, you have a knife that, even though these are aftermarket scales on the bug out, you get an idea of the thickness here. So at their thickest, the Para is a little bit thicker for sure than the bug out, but not by a huge margin. But the normal bug out is contoured, so it's going to feel a lot thinner, while these are more slab-sided and come out to the very, very edge. So, just something to keep in mind. So, with all of that out of the way. So, the first thing that I like about this knife so much is that the fact that it is made in the United States. Look, knife doesn't have to be made in the United States to be great, to be special, to have characteristics of a soul and, add value to your collection. But I am always going to be one that is going to, for lack of a better term, root for the home team. So having a knife that is American has a little bit, American made rather, is a little bit, more special feeling, at least to me, but that isn't an absolute quality. I don't think that quality comes from just one location. It comes from effort, right? That's a human thing, not just an American thing. So that's the first thing out of the way. Next thing that I do like about this a lot is just the overall design, the way that this looks. Now, this is not going to be to everybody's taste. Spyderco says that their knives are designed in the dark with, human hand and cutting in mind first. So they're not designed necessarily to be pretty, but kind of like some people might say, well, a Steyr AUG is designed to be, a streamlined and ergonomic, or a P90 is, with the, way of the kinesthetics of the, I hope that's the right word, but the, way that your body movement works. I think that those are the most cool and the most beautiful, firearms because of that fact. So this is sort of the same thing. The fact that this is designed for the human hand first. You've got this, thumb ramp up here. You've got this jumping down here, that you can choke up on, you can choke back on. You've got this rounded part that just flows into the hand, creating no hot spots whatsoever. Lots of different grips to go ahead and have with this guy. So overall, I like the way that it looks. Now, another thing that I like is that this does use the standard Spyderco pocket clip. So instead of one of the more fancy or new ones that might be in something like the sorry, the Shaman or the Tenacious or something like that. This is your OG pocket clip. So this means that there's a lot of customizable options from this guy, which we'll talk about this guy. But as you can see here, I have a Lynch Northwest clip deep carry on here, which I think is a must. So these are some of the things I like about the way, look, I'm not going to throttle plate myself here. There's just an infinite amount of things to love about this. So we're going to just jump right in instead of me torturing myself and try to find things that I like about this. So the first thing that I do love so much about this knife is the ergonomics, the actual way that they feel in the hand. You know, you're going to be hard pressed to find a knife that just sits in the hand and melts, you know, as the Para 3 does. And that is just to the fact that Spyderco as a company is, well, Spyderco as a company, right? And that is the next thing to go ahead and love. And there's going to be a lot of points. But overall, this is Spyderco at its finest, right? This title of this video will be, this is a real goat, you know, unironically, right? And that is definitely the case here. We've taken the PM2, which was a little bigger, boiled it down into an EDC size, but you still get all the different things, all the attention to detail that Spyderco does. So the cutting geometry is thick but thin the whole entire way through the knife. So this thing, full flat grind, the way that it feels, just completely obliterates things when you cut it. It's mega sharp from the factory. It's actually sharpened from machines. So there is going to be a consistency in that sharpness, unlike things that are actually sharpened by, you know, humans. Now, that isn't a perfect system. That's just a pretty good system, and we will talk about that, but overall, really good. You also got great materials here with, you know, high-quality G10. You know, again, you're getting, you know, just all the little things, the fit and finish, the quality control, which is something that we'll talk about. For the most part, you know what you're going to be getting. You can kind of handle 100 different, you know, Para series knives, and they all somewhat feel the same. The next thing that is special and to love about this, that is definitely Spyderco-y as well, is the fact that this uses the compression lock, which is a Spyderco special thing. Now, there is some knives that have kind of come out with a button compression lock recently, but again, just the liner lock compression lock that basically when you're opening it up, moves to the side, and then it wedges itself down here in this little slot in between the stop pin and the blade. So you'd have to bend this piece of metal that's like this thick to get the blade to close. Also, the fact that this, another thing to love is that this is just going to be bonkers reliable, bonkers trustworthy, bulletproof. I have had a Paramilitary 2 that I probably, it was like my first real Frigidy knife, and it was my first nice knife, you know, Digi Para 2, right? Or PM2. And I flicked that thing open probably, you know, more than 3,000 times. Open shut, full on, bang on, you know, spider flicking it, you know, thumb flicking it, as hard as possible. And I don't even know if it ever moved. I had a Para 3 that I owned for like 2.5 years. That was an S35V, and it's on earlier video channels, or videos in the channel, sorry. And again, same thing, never, they're just bomb-proof, right? This thing is going to be something you can pass down for generations. And I think just all these little things make Spyderco sort of special. The fact that the person who owns the company is also the designer, but it's a production, not a custom, like a Les George, but actually like a production company that has all these different factories, that has a factory in Golden, Colorado, that has manufacturing methods unique to them, that makes their knives in unique ways. You know, I love the fact that this has the nested liners on it. This is like one of the first, you know, knives that I was introduced that actually like brought that to, oh wait, that's a thing that you can nest the liners in instead of having them, you know, show out of the back. And, you know, again, some people are not going to like the fact that this has a shortened blade, but I'd rather have a blade that I can choke up on and get all sorts of control on when I'm cutting. And also feel like there is a secondary position that's useful, not just, hey, this has a forward choil, I'm only going to use the forward choil, or hey, the forward choil is kind of half butt designed, so I'm just going to use the back and only for an emerge. I am constantly, you know, depending on the situation, switching back and forth here. The other fact of the matter is the CQI, they're constantly quality improvement. There's so many little things that go into this knife, everything from the fact that they have a detent ball ramp that's actually well done, so you can easily push on the knife and close it. when you're hitting that double clutch wall, no problem there. Being able to go ahead and close it. The fact that they have actually removed the anodization or DLC coating on the blade, and there's a polish spot where the detent ball is going to be riding, so things are more smooth. There's just all these little tiny attention to detail things that you get with this knife that really make it feel special, even though it also feels like a work knife, which is another thing to love. You can use this without having to worry about, oh, it's too nice, it's too special, I'm gonna damage it and it's gonna be expensive to repair and it's gonna look ugly. Like, that's what this is for. This is still, even though the prices have went up, which is never a great thing, they're still reasonable compared to everyone else, in that 150 range. And they've been upgraded to S45VN. That's the other thing to love so much, is that there's every single flavor possible with a Spyderco. This is just dyed in the wool what they do with sprint runs, exclusives, limited editions, all of that stuff. And so this one was a dealer exclusive in Crazy Town 10V, which holds an edge for like K390 does, but with this Scar H looking coyote brown, which I love that whole coyote brown look. Probably started because of the FN Scar, as a matter of fact, but that's just like my color. So just lots to love here. You're going to get all the exclusives possible. And then even if you buy an exclusive, or you have a standard, S30V or the newer S45VN, it is going to be Burger King, have it your way, right? You can have anything. You can have carbon fiber scales. You can have contoured G10 skinny scales that are straight across here with milling in it. You can have Ultim scales. You can have all sorts of different flavors, skinny and normal titanium scales, contoured and non-contoured, titanium, right? Oh, and of course that fidget factor of being able to have a one-handed ambidextrous Foley knife like a access lock, but not have to worry about the, springs being damaged or coming undone, and just the fidgetability that this is this smooth, with no play, right? And makes all the nice noises audibly. It's a goat for a reason, right, guys? But please stay with me. I'm trying to blast through this one because everybody has a Pair 3 video. Do I need to explain every single thing? But I'm going to tell you what I love about it. So back to what we were talking about. Essentially, like I said, you get all the customization. You could have a front scale that's the stock G10, or a fancy version with a back titanium and a Timascus backspacer and a Timascus clip and a tritium insert in the back. I mean, just anything you want, have it your way. It is going to exist. So you could have this as work, utilitarian, or customized as you want it, old-fashioned with wood and brass, all the way up to, again, melt and boss, Timascus Zircati sides that you're spending, over $500 into the knife after everything is said and done. Man, that noise. It is one of the mainstays of customization, and that's why it would honestly make sense. And I can wholeheartedly say that if I had to carry one knife, and I've kind of said this cheekily with things like the Vosteed, and yeah, I mean, would I be perturbed if that was the case? But really, if I could have one pick of the litter, this would be it, because of the fact that I could buy this, use it, infinitely customize it, never really ever get tired of the experience, because you always have something new. Also, even more with the steels, you can have everything you want. You can have everything from an exclusive that comes in an ultra tough Crewwear or 4V or M4 that is just going to be a mega pounder zip tie destroying, pry bar. Or you can have, hey, I never want to sharpen my knife. I don't know how to really sharpen it. I am lazy. Let me get some Maxima 15V, 10V, K390, like any end of the spectrum that you want, you can essentially have with this knife. And God help us if there's ever a MagnaCut version of this, because my wallet will be hurting immediately. Just because I live in Florida and I want that corrosion resistance. Haha, I have 10V and I live in Tampa. So smart move on me, right? That's why it's literally oiled, wet right now, but that's besides the point. But it's just all those little things that make this, all the sort of thought, detail that have been put in that make the Para 3 what it is. Oh, one other thing to love that I got so excited I made the whole video, but this is really important, I think, is the way that the Para 3 is designed. One thing that I love is the way that the cutting ratio is to the knife. You know, with a normal knife, you get your handle like this, right? You grab it, and the knife is pretty straight out in front of you. But with the way the Para 3 works, when you hold the knife like this, what happens is the knife is then angled down and canted like this. So although you get this constant belly that would be great for cutting something like fruit, you know, on a surface, and you can rock and use that belly, because it's canted down like this and angled down, the tip's just right here. So you barely have to move your finger up. And now the tip is the thing dragging across that package that you're opening, right? And so you don't lose cutting power like Neve's, knife says. You don't lose cutting power by going like this. You barely move your knife up, and it's like that. And also, just to point out, you have a thicker blade stock up here, and it tapers down to that thin. So if you need to puncture something and do some heavy work, you have that. And then as you roll out, you're constantly using that edge to the tip, that fine tip, or having a fine tip to do finer work. So something else just to absolutely love about the Para 3. But back to whatever else I was saying. There's also the fact that you can take the knife apart with 2 screws, swivel it. Nothing actually comes apart. You take the blade out, you clean it, you put it back in, and because of this lanyard tube, you swivel it closed. Kind of cool how everything stays together, right? So that just makes it a little bit more approachable, a little bit more easy. Now, speaking of that is a great thing to talk about. This isn't perfect. There are some things to dislike. The first one is that disassembly. That is the biggest thing that I'm scared of with a Spyderco dual adjustment pivot system, is the fact that maintenance is not fun. You have this dual adjustment, which means you have to adjust this screw and then come over and adjust this screw. It's 2 screws that go into a middle barrel, not a barrel and a screw, or a bolt and a barrel and then a screw that goes into it. So it's really hard to go ahead and get like the Loctite, not get it seeping out into the action, get everything perfectly tuned where it's going to be drop shut like this, but also have no blade play. In my experience, a lot of the time it's like you pick one or the other. To that point, the person who I've actually got this from took this apart and hand polished and lapped the washers to get it to have this crazy buttery smooth, which is great action, but it doesn't come like that out of the factory, which again means that it could have the issues of being either sticky and stiff, unlike this one, which feels hydraulic smooth like a Sabenza, but able to flick it out and release it to get that sort of Benchmade axis lock freeness, the best of both worlds, like I was saying. So that's another thing. Also, if you do want to change the scales, this is a peened open, spread open pivot, and it is a bear to get this off if you want to customize that. So although you do have the ability to maintenance the knife and it stay together, if you do want to have that fun and customize it down the line, it's a chore, right? And so that is a negative that hasn't been resolved, right? Another thing is because these are sharpened by machines, you can get sort of weird QC stuff, and just QC overall. Again, one of the key things with the Para series is because how everything moves around, you can have just awfully blade centering, and there's all sorts of videos like Metal Complex has and other people have that basically show how to get that perfect blade centering. So again, one of those not great things. Unlike something like a Riot that you just put it together, take it apart 100 times, it's going to be dead centered every single time. This is a little different of a, little bit more care that has to go in with the Para series. And like I said, sharpened by machines, you get this things like this little weird notch here. It's sort of, each one looks a little different. Sometimes it can look like a recurve. Sometimes, it just looks weird. Also, like usually the geometry of the blade is fine, but like on this side, it comes out to a point perfectly. as you can see. And this side at the very front, it goes whoop and sweeps up a little bit more into the DLC. So again, being sharpened by machines has some pros and some cons. I'd much rather have this than have it where at the very end it all of a sudden it changes the angle and has like a little mini Tonto right here. Like, I will send a knife back immediately. I can't stand that. So I'd much rather have consistency in the edge than, you know, sharpen it by hand and get some other problems with the edge. So it's kind of a pick your poison, but just know what you're going into. Another thing is with this pocket clip, it is kind of atrocious because they put this lanyard tube all the way up here and the bolts holes for the clip down here. So on the standard clip, you get this much of the freaking knife sticking out of your pocket, like hitting every little thing on the way. So it is an absolute must, in my opinion, that you get a deep carry pocket clip that just has a tiny bit sticking out. The lanyard can still be used, just much better in every way. But the stock pocket clip at least is comfortable, so there's something good to go. Also, on that sort of CQ, again, you can have this with any knife, but this one has a little bit of detent lash, you know, where it will go up and down. You know, again, the rest of this knife is so perfect that I kind of pick my poison, and, you know, it doesn't detent lash unless you push it down on this one, so at least that is good. It will stay put and doesn't rock around unless you push it down and then push it back up. But again, just little tiny things that can, a lot of the stuff that's important is perfect, but there can be these little things that I've found with the Spyderco, like some actions can be drop free and smooth, others are like really tight and sticky and you have to work on them, right? You know, again, or peening open can be a real bear, or it can just come right apart. The tip can be perfect, or it can be, you know, kind of messed up down here. These are just those little tiny things to keep in mind with the Para 3. The other thing that I don't like is I do wish that this knife was a little bit more like either contoured from the factory updated, or that they had like a deep rounding on the edge here. Kind of like something that you can see here where it's a little bit thicker on the Microtech. Just because I kind of feel like it can feel a little blocky in your hand. Like you definitely feel those points. Not a hot spot, but it just feels blocky, right? Instead of feeling a little bit more, you know, if they had a deep beveled chamfer like this, or they had like a better 3D radius, like on an updated version, I feel like that would feel nicer, right? Like the Voss, it's too far for me to grab, I'm sorry. But the Vosteed, I pointed out that it has this deeper chamfer on the edges. Even though it's slab-sided, it feels like it's like semi-contoured. Well, this doesn't. You know, it's just slab-sided. So, something to keep into consideration. But again, there's 1 billion options out there to customize this knife. And so, although this knife feels super modern, it also feels kind of like old school and traditional at the same time. Like, although I get these cool new features and these ergonomics that are ultra nice and the compression line, I kind of get a channeling as well of like, hey, this is on bronze and it has some liners and it has some scales, and how far off is it from like a good old G CQC7, which is this, you know, rough and tough and kind of rustic, you know, built knife. And so it's kind of that perfect world. It has that soul and some of those nuances that like something that the CQC feels kind of special with. It's almost like if a knife is too perfect, like a Wii or a Civivi, then it's almost like bleh, that's boring. This has the perfect amount of things that you want, but the sort of weird little nuances that make it feel like it's special and it's yours, and that it has a soul. And it is dead nuts reliable, again, with the lock and, you know, everything. And it's just a knife that you could depend your life on. You could get done hard task with it being wider up here, fine task with it being up here, slices well with it full grind, ergonomics, carry, size, durability, fidgetability, customization. Like, if you haven't got it yet, what more could you want? It's the Para 3, guys and gals. Get it together. I don't know. But no, it's that cool of a knife that it has that, and it doesn't need that sort of silly response. It's awesome. So if you ever thought about getting this knife and you're like, there's some newer options, blah, 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 this is a must. A must. And not like, oh, well, everybody seems to like it, so I'll get it. No, this is a must in everybody's collection. Unless you just absolutely hate the way the knife is, or, you have mammoth hands and the size doesn't work for you. I mean, this size works for mostly everybody, right? It's the Para 3. That's all I need to say. It's like the Porsche 911. You don't need to say anything about more than that. It's the Porsche 911. This is the Porsche 911 version of a knife, right? So there's going to be something a little bit more exotic or a little bit does better with this, but well-rounded wise, it's the F-150. It's the Porsche 911. It's all that you need and nothing that you don't, right? And I couldn't get a better compliment than that, realistically. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video of my awesome Para 3. And, I just am super excited to make it. I'm kind of like, should I even make it? There's so many out there, but I'm like, yeah, of course I should. I love the knife. I should, share that experience with you. So I hope you guys did like it. If you did, please go ahead and give it a like, as well as subscribe. As how in the world are we at 1,900 and almost at 2,000 subscribers? More to come on that, by the way. Of course, if you do have any sort of questions, please feel free to ask with the comments down below. Most importantly, I hope everybody stays safe and has a great rest of your week. And I appreciate you taking time to watch my little channel, as there's so many amazing, amazing, amazing other channels that have reviewed this knife, and you clicked on my little video over here. Everybody take care and stay safe. Peace.